let's talk about open world versus contested space, normally as modeled by, say, Metroidvania kind of style games. First off, I wanted to say thank you for everyone who commented, the 4 or 5 of you that commented on my first couple of videos. I know it's a work in progress. One of the nice pieces of feedback, maybe not nice, but certainly useful pieces of feedback is someone just said, well, could you give me a slideshow or something you're talking about? And I don't think I'm going to survive doing this format and having it be a slideshow or any post-editing. But what I can do is handle a little bit more like a stream. So rather than be a talking head the entire time, maybe we'll just do the digital whiteboard kind of approach. So I think that'll work out better for us. Let's do that. So for today, we're talking about open world versus contested space. And what I mean by that is fundamentally how the player moves through the world. I managed to tone my canvas exactly the kind of color that I can't see my cursor anymore. So the kind of Yangian valence theory, which governs a lot of stealth games, also tends to govern open world, right? We can, on the Ubisoft or MGS5 or GTA, right? There tend to be sort of zones of control. There might be gang territories, but generally speaking, let's say green path for the player. Generally speaking, the player gets, I really have to change this canvas color because otherwise I can't see my cursor. Generally speaking, the player has, sorry about that. The player has free roam, right? That's hence free roam or open world, right? There's an open world, but I think one of the fundamental problems with this approach is that we understand this as a player, right? We understand that once we're out here, yes, we can do what I would sort of derisively term content mowing, right? I can get, there's the old. I kind of sad that they retired the packages in Grand Theft Auto, but they're little tchotchkes, right? Some other kind of low wattage, the Far Cry 2 diamonds, which I also really kind of liked. Maybe we should go back to collectathons. But there's a little bit, so long as you stay out of sort of contested space or enclaves, right? Outposts, bases. You can. There's low friction, low skill, but also kind of low gameplay density is what you get with this model. And this is something we've been really grappling with Brigador Killers because we added the ability to connect up maps, which I think is really exciting to be able to freely travel, right? Brigador Brigador was based on, I was about to go back to full screen, but let's keep it on the whiteboard, right? Brigador was the idea that we have a city that is balkanized into districts, right? It was a totalitarian state, and that for the state's control of the space, they built these district walls. And there's a lot of the supporting lore about it, but essentially we had to delineate space in the game. And saying, okay, so the district walls are what give you your connections to each of the different zones. And when the S&C takes over the planet, they are now taking over the zone control. So they therefore dictate the player's control through the move through the space. So something we wanted to invert, just as the overall premise of Brigador Killers is inverted, which is to say you're not in the corporate employ, and even though you're probably couched in terms of a military reprisal to the SNC's takeover of Solo Nobre, you aren't operating under these really tight strictures of no trust and no sort of freedom like the Brigadors operated in the first game. So we wanted to reflect that in really essential basic gameplay terms, that you can control your own passage through the world. Now, here again, look, we're 5 minutes in. We only just now mentioned Dark Souls. But so the temptation, right, is to do maybe a Dark Souls approach. Maybe it's more the open world. The problem I have with the open world is with this sort of valence model, and then say, oh, now I'm in, Corvid territory, and, this blue area is Corvid territory. And then, there might be a tighter, more important or higher security base within that territory. Part of the problem I have with this approach is it tends to have the troubles along the same axes that it allows for this kind of steady, palliative kind of content, like I said, content mower kind of gameplay. Horizon Zero Dawn, I think, does a lot of really nice things, but I also think it's kind of fundamentally brainless in the way that it moves or does not move me through the world. I think that people are deeply depressed, and then they turn to video games to explicitly not think. This is not a criticism. I'm trying to describe the current like form and why these giant open world games are as popular as they are. I'm not trying to be spicy here. But this idea of sort of wending your way, kind of around in the space. I'm still not on green. Wending your way around, kind of bouncing around kind of aimlessly, and then, I run into an outpost. The problem I have is that often, not only is this out in the world, you end up with this kind of very low wattage, although it kind of keeps the player engaged, which is goodish, depending on your intentions there. Keeps the player engaged, but it's sort of this low wattage kind of drip feed. Again, palliative care is the phrase that comes to mind with this. So I have a lot of problems with that, especially because especially in the Ubisoft model, the Ubisoft model to me is a fundamentally colonial kind of mindset, right? Because it means that once these outposts, which themselves are almost like oftentimes are coded or presented in a explicitly colonial kind of lensing. I don't know what the word I'm looking for here. Not only are they the outposts that are more or less explicitly colonial in nature, that your takeover of the space, right? An open world is to say, here, implicitly, I own this green area, and what I'm going to do is take over the rest. These outposts will be taken over by my guys, not your guys. And then finally, the map is done when I've taken all over all the space. And I'm running out of time. I want to keep most of these videos to 10 minutes. I have my morning check-in meeting. But what I'm interested in for Brigador Killers, and interested in, again, what Dark Souls does. See how I mentioned Dark Souls and then didn't talk about Dark Souls? What I'm interested in is the more, what I would say a Metroidvania, a sort of a contested space model, where I really work hard to carve out a small area, and it doesn't permanently shift over. Or if I do permanent shift overs, it's limited. And I have to work very hard to kind of carve out space for myself. And I'm only carving out the space temporarily, right? Once, like, that's the bonfire system. There's a really interesting gameplay tension that comes from allowing the player to carve out space, but only for the time, right? And then the enemies repopulate, which I think I'll probably do a follow-up tomorrow talking about sort of a part 2 on some of these ideas, because the elemental grammar of the Metroidvania, I think, is at least, okay, so I'm not going to tell what other people are doing. To me, I have underestimated the value of a lot of this grammar, and I think it's very powerful, and I think it speaks to the long-term success of that whole kind of design style. So I'm running out of time. I hope you like the new format. I hope the whiteboard format probably serves our interests better, rather than talking sort of in abstract. And I will see you guys tomorrow.